Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Today, we bask in the light of mustachioed greatness. Hi, this is Daniel Segura, host of the Mustachioed Podcastio. You like mustaches? You like movies? You like sexy Chinganos? Well, the Podcastio is the place for you. We are talking legendary mustaches from Charles Bronson to the Great Burt Reynolds to the OG Ice-T. Find the Mustachioed Podcastio anywhere you listen to podcasts. That is M-O-U-S-T-Ashioed Podcastio.
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Identity Podcast on the Podmoth Media Network, your biweekly foray into the weird, wonky, and sometimes downright spooky. I can't believe it's the end of Season 8 already, and per usual, I've got a great interview to share. In the past, I've interviewed celebs in the paranormal community like Michelle Belanger, well known for her work on Paranormal State, and spookypreneurs like Melinda Mitchell of Madame Cora's Emporium and the Museum of Mortality. This week, I bring you an interview with Matthew Robertson, a collector and seller of all things odd and macabre. I'm personally in awe of Matt's extensive collection of oddities, and I hope that you'll enjoy our chat. As is the case with many of the topics on this podcast, there may be content unsuitable for some listeners. Please consider the past content of this podcast and use that as your personal divining rod to figure out whether or not you should continue. This episode contains discussions of death, creepy collectibles including human remains, and general creepery. We also chat about religion briefly. If you don't want to listen to all that, you've been warned. You still listening? All right, let's continue. So, take a seat on your favorite bone throne, I'm sure you've got several to choose from, and enjoy this wonderful interview with Matt. And if you'd like to start your own oddities collection, or beef up the collection you already have, head on over to Matt's Etsy store. The link is www.etsy.com/shop/Matt's Curio Cabinet. I'll also drop the link into the show notes. You can also find Matt on Instagram at Matt's Curio Cabinet and on Facebook at facebook.com/Matt's Curio Cabinet. Also, if you happen to purchase a scarificator, be sure to only use it on bananas. And now, on with the show. So, I guess to start, have you always been interested in kind of the weird and macabre, or, were you interested in that before you actually began collecting what you collect? For me, I know my dad was big into Halloween, and I got into Halloween, and now he's like, what the hell is wrong with you? What do you have in your office? So I guess I'm just curious how you came to oddities collecting and the oddities community.
That's a good question. And that certainly wasn't something that was planned. I never started out collecting. I never knew anyone that collected, but I was always different, right? So Halloween was always my favorite holiday. And I think that probably came from my mother. She's always been into it as well. And the dark side of it always appealed to me. So that's probably where the fascination with that side started. And again, I've always been a little different and never understood why or how. And then I started, just seeing people that collected odd antiques, and they just always seemed so cool to me and different. And that really got the ball rolling with the fascination side of it. And then, as cliche as it sounds, there's so many people that would probably give the same answer, but I got into the show Oddities.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, it's fun. It was a lot of fun. And that was a while ago, probably just a few years after it aired. But I started binging that. And I think I probably binged it 2 or 3 times. Yeah. And I'm still not sick of it. But that show, more specifically, was in contrast to, say, Pawn Stars, right? If you were to pick one of the two, I would always go towards they're very similar, but I would always lean towards the Oddities show as opposed to the other one, Pawn Stars, just because it dealt with more things that I found more fascinating. So I would say that that was a huge jumping off point. And then from there, after watching that show, I started looking more closely at antique stores and thrift stores for those particular types of items, right?
Mm.
And and that's really how that all began. I'd put a big emphasis on my mom and Halloween, and then also that show Oddities for sure.
Yeah, and Mike Zahn, isn't Mike Zahn in the Facebook group?
Yeah, and we're not friends by any means, but we're Facebook friends, and we chat every
Yeah.
so often or bump into each other in the community every so often. So that's wild, and same with Ethan, or excuse me, Evan. Um,
Oh, is
yeah,
Evan in the group too?
yeah, she's not as active, from my
Oh.
understanding, but she pops in and out, and it's
Huh.
pretty wild to have come full circle, so to speak, and to have them on my friends list and to be able to reach out to them and chat about stuff.
Yeah, it's so crazy because I loved that show too, and you kind of become low key obsessed with the people in it because they're almost like characters themselves,
Yeah,
you
absolutely
know?
they are.
So like you see Mike Zahn responding to something about a Ouija board and you're like, holy shit, that's Mike Zahn.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is a starstruck moment for me every time I see them,
Yeah,
especially initially when I was first getting into the actual groups, right? The Facebook
sure.
groups and whatnot. So that was a big thing for me, just interacting with them. I looked up to so many of these people so early on, and I still do. It's just different now that I'm fully immersed, I guess.
Yeah, Melinda Mitchell is also a member of that Facebook community. She's going to be starting the Museum of Mortality.
Oh, cool.
I think she said in Burlington. So that should be pretty interesting. I'm really excited for that to get kicked off. But she was on the show too.
Oh, that's fun.
I interviewed her. Yeah, I whenever somebody cool or odd kind of like pops up in my feed, I'm like, hey, who are you?
Yeah, it really gives so many people an opportunity to explore their quirky sides. And I think that's one of the reasons I enjoy it so much too. It's such a unique
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, it really is. And it's kind of like, and just for the people who are listening, I'm purposefully not saying the name of the group just because there are so many people out there that don't appreciate oddities, or the weird odd side of collecting. Um,
Oh yeah.
don't want those poor admins to have to sift through a bunch of requests for people, who just want to go see something creepy or freaky.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah,
admin for several of these larger groups myself for
yeah,
gosh, just over a year. And that in and of itself was such an experience. But you're very right. There are people that might post something unrelated in a completely different group that has nothing to do with oddities. And from
right,
that post, we'll see a wave of new member requests from people that honestly have no business necessarily in an oddities group. They might see things that offend their delicate sensibilities, right? And then the next
right.
thing you know, that group gets pulled or shut down by Facebook, and that's no fun for anybody.
Well, yeah, and you yourself have been in Facebook jail.
Oh, I'm in it right now. Actually, I was just on a 30-day ban restriction, and 2 days after getting my account back, it happened again. So yeah, they're not a big fan of oddities, the Facebook folk, that's for sure.
So what was it this time?
It's tough to say. It's getting it's getting to the point now where I stop investigating or doing any research on why did this happen this time. I just kind of accept it. This is the first time it's happened back to back so quickly. But just before my last 30-day ban, I had some beef with some competitors that were bullying some people in the community, and
Sure.
and so I get the impression that they're kind of potentially going out of their way to make it rough for me. But
Yeah.
it's no big deal, honestly. It's just petty stuff, so it's fine.
Well, you know what I think it was?
What's that?
I think it was those McDonald's Coke spoons.
Oh yeah, that could be it. Yeah, that's really such a mild item too. It really blows my mind. The things that I know I get banned for, like they cite this post as the reason I'm in trouble, right?
Oh, sure.
They're so mild compared to some of the other posts that go undetected. I might post a skull or a human skull, maybe human brains, anything that others might consider a reason to be banned, and I'm over here getting banned for saying empty pharmacy bottle from 1920, right? It's so silly to me.
Yeah, it really it honestly the whole Facebook jail thing. I mean, it seems like you're there and then you disappear for like a few days. Again, you're like, hey, I'm out of Facebook jail. Here I am again, and then you post something else, and then you're gone again. Um, I
Yeah,
really don't understand like why there has to be so much drama, especially like you said, something so mundane as an old pharmaceutical bottle, like
yeah, that really
selling
blows my
old
mind.
cocaine.
Yeah, I mean, if it were full, I'd get that. And some of these bottles I list, they might be full, but certainly not narcotics.
Y- right.
So yeah, the bottles that I get banned for are typically harmless, completely mundane, harmless stuff. So it kind of blows my mind too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really astounding. Um, so let's kind of get into where you've been and how you kind of got here. Can you kind of talk about um your past and your journey to, coming into the oddities community and beginning to sell? Because I know that that was
Sure.
kind of a long road.
Yeah, it certainly was. I'd say the first half of my life, if not more, I always felt out of place and different. And if I had someone in my life that was already kind of immersed in the oddities community, it probably would have helped point me in a direction. It would have given me some purpose or some kind of affirmation, like, oh, that's okay for people to do.
Sure.
But I didn't. So I certainly don't mean to make excuses, but I always felt different and out of place, and I never really understood why. Right.
Mm.
And I think that, along with several other factors, really set me on this odd path early on. So I always felt like an outcast, and that added to, say, social anxiety issues and other issues like depression and all that fun stuff. So that was a chore. Um, and that made it really difficult to find, communities or groups that I felt like I belonged with or that I could get excited and passionate about. And that again put me on a very interesting path of poor decisions. And I kind of just kept digging a hole for myself in that way. um, it turned really into an apathetic lifestyle where I really didn't care anymore. So the deeper I got myself into trouble, the less I cared about more trouble, right?
Mm. Right.
So all these poor decisions ultimately ended me up in prison, and those decisions were like gun charges. I was stealing and selling guns. I was manufacturing and selling, gosh, like spice when that was
Mm.
popular. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yep.
Sort of taking advantage of the popularity of that. And I was a violent person too. I just was a bad person. And, and I'm certainly ashamed of that person, but I'm also super grateful for that journey and all the time I had to reflect. So, but again, those decisions ended me up in prison for about 5 years of a 10-year sentence. And while there, I really flipped a switch because leading up to that, I knew that I wanted to make positive changes. But because I was so
Mm.
deep into that negative lifestyle, I had no idea where to begin. It wasn't just one or two things I needed to change. It was everything about my life,
Right.
including my personality and my behaviors and my thoughts. And that's tough. So prison was the best thing for me.
Mm.
And I really had an opportunity while there to focus on that and those positive changes. And that again, that was really the best thing for me. So when I got out, I was motivated. I was more educated, and I had new capacity for insight, right, and self-reflection,
Sure.
which is probably one of the more valuable things, honestly. And I really dove into starting a new life, and that started with pizza delivery, and I was okay with that, and I saved up a little money,
Mm.
and I got myself some painting supplies because I knew how to paint. homes. And so I started doing that. I started a business
Sure.
and I was doing both at the same time. And then I kind of, realized, okay, I can start doing the painting thing full time. So I did. And then I found myself with some spare cash. So I was spending my free time, doing the antique store thing and thrift stores and just kind of passing the time that way. And me and my lady at the time, we were binging that show Oddities again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that moment, right, when I was watching those shows, those episodes all over again, um, I was at that point in my life where really this is it. That's what I want to do. And it wasn't a conscious decision to do it as a career, but more of a hobby. And, that feels like who I am and where I belong. So that's what I'm going to focus on. And
Sure.
so my free time from painting, say, winters are slow, I would spend that downtime, maybe crafting or building little knickknacks here and there. I would pick things up at thrift stores and, kind of make them creepy in one way or another and list them in the groups. So December 2019, I started doing that and I made my own page. And that's officially when I started collecting as well. I think late December, I was in a local antique store here in Boise and there was a human skull in a cabinet, which is unheard of here in this area.
Yeah.
And it really fascinated me. And I think I had to go back 2 or 3 times to look at it before I finally said, I'm gonna put an offer in for that. And that was before the skull market went crazy and stuff. But I put in an offer and they accepted. And for me at that time, that was a huge sum of money. I think I paid about 650, 700 for my first skull.
Okay.
And that again for me, pretty fresh out of prison, starting over, that was a pretty big sum of money.
Yeah.
But that piece officially, put me on the path of like, okay, there's really no going back now. I mean, what the hell else am I going to do with this thing? So yeah, I sort of dove all in at that moment, not specifically because of the skull, but that was my moment of committing to that lifestyle. So yeah, that really changed things for me. And then being with surrounding myself with so many supportive people, like my girlfriend and my folks, and they really helped me out, supporting me and
Sure.
enabling my positive changes and stuff. So I'm very grateful to them as well. But I'd say that all those factors led me to the Facebook groups, and the Facebook groups, the oddities groups, really gave me an opportunity to put my time and attention into something I was very passionate about. And the response to my little knickknacks and crafts, my spooky stuff that I was trying to resell was outstanding. It was remarkable. And there was no turning back after that. So I just kept going.
Yeah. So these little knickknacks you're talking about that you were building, what were you building? Because I never actually saw any of that. I think I've only been in the group maybe, I want to say maybe a year and a half. So I think I missed all those little spooky knickknacks.
They were pretty typical because I was spying the groups for a while before I started making things. So I was really just getting inspiration from other low profile sellers,
Oh,
just
sure.
people doing it for fun. So we'll say, maybe putting a skull on a doll, or
Mm.
let's see what else. I might make a shadow box display of some bones, or one piece I still have actually. I'm looking at it. It's a vintage nun doll, probably a 1930s nun doll,
Mm.
and it's got a monkey skull on it with the typical nun garb.
Oh,
So
sure.
it's pretty neat and spooky, and that's a piece I'm tied to because it's one of the first things I made that I was pretty proud of. But
Right.
like butterfly displays and things like that, I would make and flip in the groups.
Oh, sure. All right. So I guess from there, we've kind of addressed how your collection kind of changed from a personal collection to acquiring and selling. And it really seems like oddities in general are your passion. So I guess my question is, what is it about oddities that brings you so much enjoyment?
I think it comes back to always feeling slightly different than everybody and not really understanding why or how.
Hmm.
And I'm sure there's people out there that look at IKEA shoppers, for instance, and think, "Gosh, that's just kind of boring." Right? I don't want IKEA furniture and decorations
Right.
like everyone else. I don't want that print on my wall that a million people have. And I think that's always been my mindset. And not to put anyone down, of course, because everyone, you know, everyone enjoys what they enjoy, and I encourage that. I've just always felt a little different about that kind of stuff. So I prefer to be surrounded by things that are more unique, um, and to take it farther, dark,
Mm.
macabre things that are unusual and cool, cliche cool or like stereotypical cool, but for reasons that may go misunderstood, right? For
Sure.
me, being surrounded by the dark and macabre gives me an appreciation for life, and where I've been and where I'm going, and that we're really on a short ride here, and you might as well surround yourself with things that make you happy instead of just bland, boring things.
Yeah, and I'm with you on the IKEA stuff. I'm not a fan.
And again, not to knock anyone, some of the furniture is really cool. I've had some, you know. I just don't want to surround myself with something that a million other people have.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think half of my room right now is those IKEA Detolf cabinets, the tall
Oh,
glass
sure,
ones. Um,
sure.
and I've got a huge collection of Funko Pops, so like half of the room is Funko Pops,
Oh, there you
and
go.
then the rest is like deformed turtles and taxidermy and like random I think I bought I think I bought a couple of human gallstones
Oh, okay.
in the group.
Oh, wow. See, I don't have
Um
any of those yet.
what else did I get? Oh, I
I'm
got
trying. I'm trying to make my own, so I don't have to buy them.
oh yeah, there you go. I didn't
No,
get
I've
to
seen
keep
some
mine when I had
pictures.
my gallbladder out, so I was like, God damn it, I'm gonna buy some.
Oh, that's a shame. They always take it and dispose of it, and they should just give
They
it right back.
do. And it's lame that like that's mine.
I know. I worked so hard on that. You just took it from me.
Right.
No, I've seen some pictures of your setup, and you definitely have quite the range of tastes. So I can definitely appreciate that. And some of the people that collect what I collect, they have IKEA stuff to display with. That's really cool. Some of
Yeah.
the stuff is really neat, honestly. I guess I'm speaking more in regards to say artwork and things like that, things that are more visual.
Oh, sure.
I'm not a big fan of mass produced, things to surround myself with in that regard. So,
Yeah, well, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I consider myself a rarity.
mhm.
Not like in the way like, ha ha ha, I'm so great. Um, but just the fact that, I'm a unique individual and I have unique quirks and
Oh, absolutely.
things are me, you know?
Yeah, yeah. They definitely portray your personality better than something that's mass produced can do.
Well, right. And I mean, some people have seen like my podcast logo and they're like, what the hell is that? Why does it have fangs? It's a deer, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's a Siberian deer. It's a musk deer. So it has tusks and they fight with the tusks and they're like, "Oh." I said, "Yeah, it's a vampire deer." Like, "No, come on, man." Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much out there to take in and explore, and we're really kind of conditioned to just accept, what's cultural to us and what's common, and that's
Right.
kind of where I like to deviate.
Right, and there's so much weird stuff too in different cultures.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like not necessarily that this is weird. It's odd to me because I'm not a part of that culture. But I recently got some hell money
Oh, okay.
and I just love it. I'm like that
Isn't that wild?
yeah, like that is so macabre. Like, so I took it and I put it on my shelf by like my fossilized whale vertebrae and my human gallstones, and then like my little well, they're not really little. They're kind of big, actually. They're the rings from the Giants at Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus from like the
Oh
19.
yeah, those are great.
Three of those giant rings. So I displayed it all on this, little coffin shaped shelf. And everybody who comes into my office is like, what is that? And they're not talking about the shelf or the fossils or, well, I mean, they don't usually know what the gallstones are. They think that they're just rocks. Um, but they look at the hell money and they're like, wow, what is that?
Yeah, well, it's colorful and it draws the eye and it looks like currency. It really looks
Well,
real.
yeah, and it's like it's a learning experience, right? So
Yeah,
you get
yeah,
and so what you're saying about connecting, feeling like you can't really connect to other people, I feel like that's how I connect to other people.
yeah. That's a great point.
Look at this weird shit. This is the story behind it. Like, what do you think about that? And then people will start, communicating back and forth. I mean, that's really how I got the following for my podcast was people saw me posting weird shit on Facebook and they were like, what is that? And then I told them
Yeah,
and they were like, oh, you have a podcast. And they started following me. So, I mean, I think that we're kind of in the same boat as far as, the oddities community kind of helping us to connect because I'm not a real social butterfly.
yeah,
Generally people suck. So I try to stay away from them.
yeah, yeah.
Possible.
I feel like I suck, so that's kind of where I'm at. I stay away from people to give them the relief. But no, I completely relate to what you're saying. The sharing aspect is the most rewarding part to me. If I
Yeah.
learn something new that I find incredible, amazing, and fascinating, especially when it applies to my interests, like dark, macabre stuff, like antique funeral or embalming or human remains. I
Oh,
love
sure.
sharing that stuff because it's so fascinating to me. The
Yeah.
little kid side of me comes out for sure. Like, look what I found. Look at this.
Right.
So
And there's so
that's definitely
many.
the most rewarding side for me.
Yeah. Well, and like there's so many people in the oddities group too that have little kids that are starting their own collections. And I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's so cool. And I mean it's cute too. Like, oh, that's cute. Jimmy is interested in bones or whatever. But it's kind of cool that we're kind of influencing the next generation of oddities collectors.
yeah.
Kind of small, tight knit group.
Yeah, that's another thing that blows my mind. And I wish someone would have done that for me early on.
Yeah.
But giving kids a sense of purpose and direction without it being, we'll say common things. It's perfectly fine to put someone on drums when they're young, so that they can
Yeah.
learn and it gives them, something to do and learn and potentially grow into a career or whatever. But to give them a sense of identity that's different from everyone else. Which oddities and collecting and antiques seems to do that. That's really special to me, and that gives them
Yeah.
a greater understanding of the difference between individual people early on, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I know that we've kind of already talked about some of the potentially offensive things that, you posted on Facebook or, sold in your shop.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually have a couple of listener submitted questions.
Oh, okay,
So the first one is a little long,
sure.
and it's from Jennifer in Akron, Ohio. Jennifer wants to know how you deal with oddities that have a dark past and the items that it sounds like she's asking about the energies that are potentially attached to those items. Um,
Sure, I get that question quite a lot.
yeah, and
You
then
know,
the other part of it is you list these darker items based on their moment in history, and you talk about the history quite openly. I've seen books on eugenics in your shop, unclaimed cremains, lobotomy tools, brothel tokens. I could go on because I doubt there's an oddity out there that somebody outside of the oddities community couldn't look at and say, well, that's inappropriate. How do you go about crafting the content for your sales posts? Is it like walking on eggshells, or do you pretty much know how people are going to respond and just do you? And then she asks about whether or not you've received a lot of flack from certain people based on what you sell or what you've sold?
That's a great question. Again, I get the first part of that question quite often, but the second part, less for sure, if ever. And this is all pretty new to me, even though I'm about 2.5 years into this now, which is wild to me saying that out loud. I still feel brand new to the community. Every day I feel brand new. But to answer the first part, I grew up believing in, we'll say, we'll say negative energy, positive energy, all that fun
Mhm.
stuff, ghosts and all that spooky stuff. And I think as I got older and became more of a cynic, I sort of found my heroes. I really discovered that my heroes were some high profile critical thinkers. Carl Sagan, James Randi, people that who were openly calling out the spiritual believers and a lot of the people that made a living from being psychics or ghost hunters and things like that, right?
Oh, sure.
And so I found myself believing less and less of it as an adult. And now that I'm surrounded by, I'm literally surrounded by human remains,
Mm.
and I have never had an experience myself, right? I
Mm.
That to me leaves two possibilities. Not to say there are more, but in my mindset, the possibilities are either that those things don't exist, right,
Mm.
or that for some reason they're leaving me alone. Um, and I'm okay with it either way, right?
You're right.
But no, that is a great question. I get it often. And to put it simply, I just don't believe in that stuff. My
Mm.
personal worldview is that when you die, you're dead, and your remains are just that. They're just left behind.
Sure.
And I personally would rather be honored on someone's shelf than in the ground.
Yeah.
But that's just me, of course. A lot of people get creeped out by that. But the second part of the question, that's a great question. And I think the most simple answer to that is that I really just do me, right? Part of what I do is is treasure hunting. Basically, I feel like a pirate sometimes because I'm always inspired by things around me or other collectors or just random things in the world. Maybe I'm watching something on YouTube and I see something in the background that fascinates me, right? So I'll
Mhm.
immediately grab my tools and start looking, start treasure hunting for those things, and I'll usually find them in one form or another, and that opens up a whole new world for me of exploration. I'm always finding things that I never knew existed, and they're always coming in the mail every single day. I've got new things coming and going, and it's really rewarding in that way to be able to discover all this new stuff. It's new to me, right? And so
Right.
that really inspires awe and curiosity every single day for me, and it's really exhausting, but it's also really rewarding. So again, the simple answer is I just really do me, and the people who get enjoyment out of my posts and who are interested in buying some of the things that have passed through my hands, those tend to be the people that share that worldview. Not all of
Sure.
them, of course, but I find that a lot of people are following the page just because it's just the morbid curiosity of what I might post next, right? they,
Oh,
they may
sure.
not be
Right. Yeah.
buyers at all.
Poke the freak
um
and see what happens.
yeah, yeah, so a lot of them are easily offended, or they speak up about certain posts, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
absolutely okay. I don't take offense to that. I understand that a lot of what I post or do or find or share, it's offensive, right?
Yeah.
I used to be morbidly into, say, child pieces, because to me the untimely death of a human is the most tragic, and I find
Sure.
I find a lot of beauty in tragedy, because again our journey is so short regardless. So to think about journeys being cut, especially short, is tragically beautiful to me. And so I
Mhm.
focused on child pieces for quite a bit. So when I post child pieces, I tend to expect some some either disgust or some repulsion, some negative feedback. But again, I'm not really in this to make others happy primarily. That's not my primary reason for doing this. That's just a bonus. So yeah, if people follow and they enjoy what I post, that's great. But at the end of the day, this is really all about me enjoying my journey. And I think that is one of the reasons that the page and the shop have been successful, is because it's clear that I really enjoy what I do and I
Yeah.
enjoy making other people happy. So it's been very rewarding in that way.
Yeah, and I mean, in all honesty, I always say when somebody takes issue with something that I post, it's just making my life a little bit easier because then I know that I just have to put you on my blocked list.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
done.
And that's a great point. My block list on Facebook is incredibly long, but
Yeah.
it's never because someone voices an opinion on my business page.
Mm.
It's always because they want to make it personal, and
Uh,
that's usually never my prerogative. It's almost always someone else's, and that's okay. But again, it makes it really easy for me to figure out whoever crosses the line between my business and my personal.
mm,
They're usually the ones that find themselves blocked.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm definitely grateful to Facebook for that feature because it makes it real simple sometimes.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, my block list isn't necessarily as prolific as yours, but it's nice now that my Facebook is kind of getting to a point where I see what I want to see and I hear what I want to hear.
Oh yeah,
And I
definitely a
understand
benefit.
too that's a little problematic because then you don't really see anything else.
Yeah, yeah,
But I
that's
don't
a good
really
point.
want to see anything else. So,
Yeah, there is a fine line between, say, taking in new experiences and new opinions that are
right.
conflicting versus, say, an echo chamber where all you hear are
Yep.
maybe reinforcements of your own opinion, and that's unhealthy, of course. But there's
Yeah.
both ends of the spectrums, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah. Facebook seems to do a great job of being either black or white, and there's not really any shade of gray in there. It's just kind of, oh, you like this really super conservative page? Oh, well, here's 500 other super conservative pages. And then all of a sudden your Facebook is ultra conservative and you can't see anything else. And, obviously the other way as well. You
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
NPR and liberal media, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, now all I see is liberal media. And I kind of want to see what the other side is saying because I want to respond or I want to have a dialogue, but I can't.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty toxic, and it's gotten really bad for sure.
Oh God, the
And
pandemic has
yeah,
made people insane.
it really
Oh
has.
my
Yes,
God. I
yeah,
don't like being a member of the oddities community and like posting weird shit and whatever. Like, yes, I get responses to the things that I post, but it seems like the responses that I've been receiving most recently, like since the pandemic really ramped up, have been just 3 or 4 times as insane.
yeah, yeah. It really has.
Ugh.
Everyone's got a megaphone right now just because they're bored. Everyone's bored, and they're all eager to be heard. We'll say.
Well, right. And where do you go when you want to be an armchair expert on literally everything? You go on Facebook,
Yep, yeah.
sit in the
You're
dark and
right.
comment on everybody else's shit and know everything.
Yeah, yeah. And again, that takes me back to it definitely brings it back to how silly it is that I get banned for some things that
It
are
re-
so generic, right? And not for voicing opinions or being, disrespectful, um, but for posting, a knickknack from
yeah,
1920.
right.
Yeah.
Ugh,
So,
God.
and I might get an opportunity to have it peeled. Like, let's get a human to look at this, and they come in and they can. Sorry, this is totally against the rules. You can't be posting bottles. That's unacceptable, right? But meanwhile, people are just tearing into each other about politics and stuff, and that's okay.
Oh yeah, well, and I read an article pretty recently too about the people that actually like work behind the scenes at Facebook and review all of these issues.
Mhm.
And some of the shit that they see, like they have PTSD now.
Oh yeah, I can believe
Like
it.
they're really messed up because they're seeing anything and everything that these random people, these crazy people are trying to post on Facebook, just for the public to see. And they have to review it. That's their job. And like, I understand that they need to have people to do that, but holy shit. No?
Yeah, they definitely have their hands full. That's
Yeah.
for sure. And it goes the same for religion and stuff, of course. In fact, before I really found purpose, I was focusing on my journey on religions
Hmm.
and just exploring all those options. And I found myself
Yeah.
not quite, able to pick or settle on any. So I kind of went with the title of like a secular humanist, right? I'm not quite
Oh,
atheist.
sure.
If evidence presents itself, I'm happy to change my mind, that kind of thing, right? Um, but that's just another example of a super toxic environment to surround yourself with. And I feel the same way about politics. It's just so bad for the soul. It's really, really, really bad. And it's so easy to get worked up over people's conflicting opinions. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been to Vatican City, so I'm
oh, fun.
completely jaded now.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
110%.
Yeah, isn't that? I think what is that? The smallest country in the world, but it's also the richest.
It is one of the most insane places I think I've ever been.
I'm sure it's surreal. I'm sure it was just so
Oh
surreal.
my God. Well, they literally have a line. There's this metal line in the ground that separates Vatican City from the rest of Rome.
Yeah.
And when you're in Vatican City, everything is shiny and everything is beautiful, right? Everything is perfect. And the stupid little guards there with their puffy hats and their stupid freaking pantaloons. And then you turn around and you literally take 10 steps outside of Vatican City over that line. And there are people just prostrate on the stones who are starving to death. And they're not allowed in Vatican City.
Just so wild to me.
That was the thing that got me the minute, because so when I went there for free. I was chosen to go on a pilgrimage because when I was in college getting my bachelor's degree, I think I was probably the closest to being a Satanist than I ever would be in my life.